Welcome to Twin Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chapin. Today we have Detroit Lions training camp day 2. There was mirrored with something that none of us want to see as you get closer to the season. You never want to see the cart come out, and it came out for Chauncey Gardner Johnson. Now, Tom Pelissero, Field Yates, they're both reporting that he is going to be okay. He's going to be fine. Field Yates reported that he's going to be day to day, so that's going to be an interesting thing to monitor. Obviously, with other injury news, Emmanuel Mosley, Dan Campbell expects him back in Allen Park this week, presumably by Friday. What it means, does he play? Does he practice? Probably not, but just to have him back and into the building would be a great thing for the Detroit Lions. Marvin Jones, back injury. They said they're taking it easy with him because obviously when you get a back injury, he's an older player. You don't really want to take your chances with the guy. There was an interesting development out of training camp with Jameson Williams. So Jameson Williams, this is from Mike O'Hare from Pride of Detroit. On the very first play of 11-on-11 drills, Williams took a handoff and sprinted to the sidelines. When forced out of bounds, Williams grabbed the back of his leg, called for a trainer. He walked back to the team and had medical personnel try to stretch his leg out. So it's probably just a cramp, but it's something to monitor as we get closer to the preseason games and the open scrimmages, because I know a lot of people that are going out to Allen Park to watch the training camp are going to be wanting to watch Jameson Williams, and because we're not going to get to see him until like week 7. So that's an interesting development. Obviously, with the major news of the day, Chauncey Gardner Johnson, he's going to be fine. The good thing about it is Detroit has depth that they've never had before in that safety position. And the one thing that has been told to me from multiple people is that the Detroit Lions, like, they really value that hybrid safety role. So you got guys like Melifonwu, you got guys like Brian Branch and Chauncey Gardner Johnson that fit into that mold. So there's not many players besides those three and maybe Will Harris that fit into that equation. So having Chauncey Gardner Johnson for week 1 would be the best thing. So my advice to the Detroit Lions coaching staff, I'm sure they already know, let's just set him aside and no more contact drills or anything like that, because what a scary moment that was for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, you never want to see that happen to any of the players, but a guy like Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who gives the defense a lot of playmaking ability next to Kirby Joseph, next to Tracy Walker, that would be a massive blow for this Detroit Lions team moving forward. So this is from DetroitLionsNews.com, DetroitLions.com. Mike O'Hare said, on the run, it's only a second day of training camp, but rookie running back Jahmyr Gibbs gave another look at what he can bring to the offense. On a run around right end, he cut through a gap and went for a long gain. Now, if you are a Jahmyr Gibbs fan, you love to see that, because that shows you that, look, this kid could be potentially special, and not just as a playmaking ability with running the ball, but passing the ball too. That is his major skill set that a lot of people they overlook. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, that's going to be a great tandem, especially when you got Justin Jackson and maybe Mo Ibrahim, or maybe someone emerges that we didn't even expect. That'll be something to monitor. From 10-20 men, it's about kickoff return. Outside of kicker and long snapper, one of the open special teams competitions in Detroit is for the kickoff returner. Justin Jackson held the job last year and was recently re-signed, so the job could be his once again. Jackson finished 4th in the NFL with 26.7 yard average on kick returns last year. The Jackson and Khalif Raymond, Jamar Jefferson, Gibbs, and Maurice Alexander were back returning kicks in the special teams portion of practice. It's interesting. Jahmyr Gibbs was returning kicks. A lot of people, a lot of teams, they don't believe in putting their guys like that in back there to take kicks, kick returns. But it's interesting to just hear that. And obviously, Maurice Alexander, that was the guy last year that shined out. Jamar Jefferson, we know what he's capable of. Gibbs was the kind of surprise that I didn't really think was actually on the table. But man, that's a pretty sizable kind of stable of kick returners, and you can never have enough of them. A lot of teams, they struggle to find that one kick returner. If you could have a couple, especially when injuries come to the forefront, you will be much better than the teams that don't have that depth at kick returner. and that's a huge thing to have. Is because obviously you're talking about field position when you start the game. You're talking about field position when you get to the when you get on the offense. Like the field position battle is absolutely critical in the NFL. And we always see it every year. Um, this is from Michael Hare from DetroitLions.com. Safety Tracy Walker talked on first day camp out. He's happy to be back from the Achilles injury that forced him to miss the rest of the last season. He got an interception Monday and made a nice return down the sideline. This is something you like to see. Obviously, with Kirby Joseph coming back to the Detroit Lions, in his going into his second year, you would love what you saw from Kirby Joseph in year one. If Tracy Walker comes back, Chauncey got with the being healthy for once, I can't wait to see that two tandem of Kirby Joseph and Tracy Walker going step for step on each other, with Chauncey Gardner Johnson being in that slot role with that hybrid safety role. Um, this is also from DetroitLions.com. Early in practice Monday, a team period, Goff threw a huge bomb that had to travel at least 50 plus yards in the air and fell right into the arms of Khalif Raymond, who had gotten behind Jerry Jacobs. Now, you don't like to see your cornerback like Jerry Jacobs, who will presumably be your second cornerback on the opposite side of Cameron Sutton, get burned by Khalif Raymond. But that is good news on the front of Jared Goff has been working on that deep ball all off season. So if he has developed that and put it into his repertoire, that could be really good for the Detroit Lions, because you love to hear what he's doing and you love to see that he's actually making good plays through the air with his receivers, and against a pretty good cornerback too. That can't be dismissed, because a lot of people talk about Jerry Jacobs and they talk about he was a UDFA, blah blah blah, but he was one of the better corners for the Detroit Lions in last year. So that's something to really keep um, track of. If he could develop that deep ball like he kind of had with the LA Rams in, I think, 2019, the year they went to the Super Bowl, this could be really special for the Detroit Lions, because the one thing that Jared Goff really struggled with last year was that deep touch on the ball. If he could develop that deep touch on the ball, that would be critical for the Detroit Lions moving forward. Backup quarterback Nate Sudfeld is benefiting from his familiarity with the offense, something that he did not have last year when he was acquired at the end of the preseason. He showed the difference one play Monday, rolling right and throwing back to rookie tight end Sam Laporta. That's from Michael Hara of DetroitLions.com. Look, I don't have confidence in Nate Sudfeld to be good backup quarterback. But if he understands the offense good enough, that's good enough for me. Obviously, if you lose Jared Goff, you're screwed anyways, and because we know Hendon Hooker is probably going to end up on the NFI list, so that sucks. But Nate Sudfeld, if he has to be put into a game situation, you hope the best, but you're not really hopeful that he will actually do what he is asked and win games, because let's be honest, like Jared Goff goes down, that's going to be a really bad time for the Detroit Lions moving forward, and you just hope that you never see that to happen with the Detroit Lions. Next thing, this is from Tim 20 of the DetroitLions.com. I got a lot of it from DetroitLions.com because they have a great article I'll put in the comments. I thought rookie linebacker Jack Campbell had a nice second practice Monday. He made some nice run fits and was running right with the same pass with some pass catchers in 7-on-7 drills. He continues to take second team Mike reps. The interesting thing to point out here is he's taking second team reps. What the Detroit Lions are not going to do is enforce him into a starting role when he's not ready for it. They want to make sure he's completely ready for it, because come week one, when the Detroit Lions play the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, that's one of the best quarterbacks that you can go against to play in your first game. So that will be very interesting. With the kicker job, Riley Patterson, Parker Romo are battling for the kicker job, and each got an opportunity to make an impression on day 2 of camp, ranging from about 32 yards to 43 yards. Both Patterson and Romo made all their kicks Monday. A lot of people talked about why they released Michael Badgley, and I feel like that they just wanted a better look at Riley Patterson, and John Parker Romo could be he could be a total X factor in this kicking competition. Obviously, as we get forward to training camp, we're going to learn more about how good John Parker Romo is, or Riley Patterson, who is distancing himself from the competition. That was a tongue twister for a minute, but Um, and then this is the last thing before we get into the last part that I want to get into. So this is about O-line depth from Mike O'Hara. He says there are a few names to keep in mind when thinking about Detroit's depth up front along the offensive line. Matt Nelson, left tackle. Coyote Osake from like left guard. Ross Piersbacher, center. Graham Glasgow, right guard. And Ifede, the right tackle, who was with the Bears and Seahawks. And they played the majority of the second team reps Monday. It's worth noting that the Lions move a lot of players in and out of their second and third team, and that was from Tim 20min from DetroitLions.com. So it was a scary day for day 2 of the Detroit Lions training camp. Obviously, you would never want to see what happened to Chauncey Gardner Johnson, and we're lucky that he is just fine. And we'll get more reports on it tomorrow when Dan Campbell speaks to the media. But it's a very critical that the Detroit Lions did what they did in the draft when they drafted Brian Branch, when they kept Ifatu Malafanu. That's kind of their safety hybrid guys that they really want to put into the games. And that's a huge part of this Detroit Lions defense that people don't really understand. If you go back to this New Orleans Saints days, the Saints really they valued that hybrid safety, a guy who can play in the slot and play the run and play back. That's one of the things that they really, really like. That's one of the things Aaron Glenn really likes about the flexibility of the defense, and he didn't have that in prior years, but he has it this year. And if Chauncey Gardner Johnson was to miss time, obviously you don't want to throw Brian Branch into the game 1 against Patrick Mahomes, where Mahomes will take advantage of a rookie making his first start. That would be pretty. That wouldn't be a good time for Brian Branch. But if Chauncey Gardner Johnson is just fine, that is a disaster avoided by the Detroit Lions in day 2 of training camp. And look, the training camp is just about getting the bodies right for the NFL season. When you talk about the NFL season, it's a long road to go from training camp to the playoffs to potentially a Super Bowl. The bodies have to be right. You have to make sure you're taking care of your body, and that's what training camp is all about. And when you see a guy like Chauncey Gardner Johnson get hurt in training camp, and it appeared to be severe at first, you're hopeful and you're glad that it isn't severe as it looked or you heard it was from Pelissaro, Schefter, and all the insiders that were talking about CJ Gardner Johnson being hurt. So look, day 2 of training camp was a kind of an emotional roller coaster for a lot of Lions fans. When you talk about Chauncey Gardner Johnson getting hurt, when you talk about, then you hear that he's going to be fine. Like, what a range of emotions. I know all the Lions fans were having those same range of emotions where you were like, oh my God, it's happening again. And then you went to, oh my God, he's going to be fine. That's what you have to be happy about. Obviously, if it made your heart skip a beat, well, there's a lot of good hospitals around the area, so you'll be fine. But Chauncey Gardner Johnson being fine is probably the best news of the day. And the Detroit Lions, if Chauncey Gardner Johnson were to miss time, which Field Yates reports he's day to day, they are much better equipped to handle a loss of Chauncey Gardner Johnson than they were in the past. But let's not overgloss it. Losing Chauncey Gardner Johnson and his playmaking skills added to Kirby Joseph, added to Tracy Walker, would be a definite downgrade from whoever is there, especially with Brian Branch being only a rookie. This is Between the Whistles Detroit. I'm Joe Chap, and we will have more Detroit Lions content coming up. So stay tuned and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.